Hello and welcome. I am so glad you're here. We're going to talk about mind shifting today. To say that divorce is a major life transition is an understatement, as you all know. It can leave even the most well put together woman struggling with self-doubt, leave them emotionally frozen and unable to see the path forward. Listen in as Kelly McCooeye shares how she, after divorce at age 47, rebuilt her life from the inside out. This is the Silver Divorce Podcast, broadcast from the Whitfield Media Group studios in Chattanooga, Tennessee, proudly brought to you by our title sponsor, the Center for Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, and show sponsor, Medicare Misty. Center for Sports Medicine and Orthopedics is the area's leading provider of multi-specialty orthopedic care. Using innovative surgical techniques and technologies, our team of specialists deliver exceptional results backed by exceptional patient care. Learn more at sportmed.com. Medicare Misty is a real person who can help answer your Medicare questions. Get real help from her team at medicaremisty.com. And I'm your host, Lisa McCluskey. And now, let's podcast. Well, today I am so pleased to be joined by Kelly McCooeye. She is a transformational coach. She helps ambitious women break free from that self-doubt, from overthinking, and those emotional blocks that keep us from moving forward with confidence and clarity. Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here.
You know, was really excited to learn some of your techniques for helping women break free of that mind shifting, because it is something that just plagues us greatly. And I know you went through your own divorce at age 47, and when you rebuilt your life, it was major. You deconstructed your faith. You navigated the emotional weight of starting over. You had to rediscover your identity. And then out of all of that, out of the ashes of all of that, you created a thriving business that empowers other women to do the same. So let's start. Would you just share your story?
Yeah. Where to start? I got married when I was 18. Grew up very religious, and then married someone that I knew my parents would approve of. I did the safe thing instead of going to school and going outside of all of my comfort zones. I did what I knew and got married and had kids. And he was a pastor and a speaker and author, and also a covert narcissist. I had no concept of what that was until long after my divorce. But I was so disconnected from myself that I continued to make decisions based on what I knew would be safe and get the approval and fulfill the expectations that other people had for me, because I didn't know how to connect to myself and live in a way that was fulfilling to me. I didn't know how to dream what I really wanted, because I had been trained so young to just give up what I needed, what I wanted, to do what was expected and what the rules said to do. So by the time I was 40, my body was breaking down and I was in a very dark place. I remember my 40th birthday going, there has to be more to me than this, for me than this, because if this is all there is, then what's the point? And in my mid 40s, I reached a point where I remember sitting on my couch talking to my friend and realizing that I couldn't do this for another 25 years, that I would literally rather be dead than to do this for another 25 years. And it wasn't that I was suicidal, but that I just couldn't keep doing this. To stay where I was, to stay married to who I was married to, and just stay. I couldn't do it. And it was definitely a mutual thing, but that was it, for me. It was this visceral understanding that if I stayed, if my physical health didn't kill me, my mental health would. So I chose to live. And to live meant just tearing down my whole life and rebuilding. And I couldn't get to that place in my mind where I was ready to make that choice until I had deconstructed my faith, my beliefs enough that I just didn't believe in a God that wanted me to stay in such a harmful environment anymore. Because up until then, it was very much my beliefs that were holding me in that place that was so harmful.
Yeah. So did you actually believe that you had to play a certain role because of the faith that you were following?
I don't think I ever thought it through as clearly as that.
Mm-hmm.
It was much more of just pain and looking for not pain. Do you know what I mean? Like it wasn't logically thought out in that way.
You didn't really think of it as the faith that you had grown up in and had been living in was part of what was keeping you from thinking there was another way.
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
But I was spending a lot of time thinking about what did I really believe about God?
Mm-hmm.
And got to the place where I couldn't keep my mind in the place where I believed that God wanted me to be in a place that was so harmful to me.
Yeah, absolutely. If a loving God would not want you to be in a place that was harmful, that was, there are many different types of abuse. It's not all physical abuse, and some of it is emotional abuse. So so that had to be, you were a pastor's wife, and that how did you even begin to go about then leaving? Did you leave, or what next step did you take once you realized that you just could not go on with that life?
Well, like I said, it was very much mutual. That I'm talking about like my side of the story, but
Mm-hmm.
we were seeing a therapist. He had, by that point, he had decided, well, if these things didn't work out, then we would be separated in a couple of years. And I just called his bluff because I knew that that's what he liked to do, was bluff. That just if he just sets down the hard line, then she'll fall in line and do what she's supposed to do. And it just stopped being a threat. It was a promise.
Yeah, at least you knew him well enough that
Yeah.
And a lot of times, that's not always clear. People can be afraid to call somebody's bluff if they're not ready for that next step.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, if you struggle with self-doubt normally and you overthink everything, a major life transition like divorce, you almost have to undergo a major mind shift in how you think of things.
Yes. Yeah. It's so weird to look back on it now, because I was saying this to my daughter recently, that it felt like I was just walking through a snowstorm and all I could see was putting one foot in front of me. I couldn't see the bigger picture. And I am someone who needs to see the bigger picture, but I was just in the middle of the storm and I couldn't see. I could just hold on to the fact that I wanted to live. So, I mean, by that time my body was breaking down and I have fibromyalgia, and it was bad. And I just started to move more, and I started to walk around the block, and every step felt like a knife in my back at first. But I would go to 2 blocks and then 3, and then I started doing yoga, and I just gradually, as as that decision to leave formed in my mind and I started moving more, the depression that I had been under for many years started to lift. And I just started to be able to imagine a life outside of what I had always known. And it was very much coming out of a cage where I'd been trapped for so long. It was, yeah, it wasn't, looking back on it now, I thought that I was being very self-aware, and I thought that I knew myself and knew what was going on, but I didn't realize until much longer that I was walking around just covered in the gore of my marriage and all of the stuff that I was going through. I had no idea.
So were you into coaching at that time, or were you? Can tell me a little bit about what was your life like when you were going through that?
I have always been someone who does coaching and just, helping people walk through stuff just because that's who I am.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was involved in church, I did, teaching classes on dream interpretation or, just small groups where just building relationships and helping women connect with each other and themselves, that kind of thing. I taught seminars on how to find what you're called to and your purpose in life. That has always been just a core of who I am. It wasn't until I had been divorced for a while that I finally was just driving down the road one day and thought, why have I not done that yet? Just started my coaching business and just do it. Yeah, it felt like a dialect that I'd already always spoken, but didn't know the structure of the language. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to learn it more formally. So that's what I did.
Okay. Well, it's interesting that so many people who have gone through the trauma of divorce end up devoting their lives and their careers to helping others. So that's why I ask where you were at that time and what you were doing. So how did you go about then? There's a lot of self-talk and trying to sort through what you're going to do with your life next. And I call it mental clutter. And women tend to be the worst at that inner critic, criticizing ourselves. And how did you start to clear that away and get some clarity around what you wanted with your life?
Well, I listened to podcasts.
Okay. That's a vote. Yay for podcasts.
Yeah, while I was working and driving and walking, I just downloaded information for a couple of years, just let it soak into me and let it gradually change me as I thought through things. I've always been someone who will go after my own issues just because the psychology of it fascinates me. So I just started going after deeper and deeper things and working things through, and then I got into mind shifting, and it was transformational.
Okay, so tell us, what is mind shifting?
Mind shifting was developed by a guy named Stevie Kent in the UK after thousands of hours of exploration and experimentation. He developed these systems. There's 6 modalities. You can use this with a simple problem or a larger blockage, a belief, traumatic memory, or a goal. There's always hidden goals that keep us from achieving an outward goal. So, for example, if you're trying to lose weight, but your body believes that it's not safe to be attractive, that goal of safety is always going to stop you from the outward goal of losing weight. So it's like a series of questions that I lead people through on a loop, and it the first questions bring up the subconscious memories to the consciousness so they can be released. And then the next questions are more about possibility thinking. So what needs to happen for this to not be a problem? What would you rather believe? That kind of thing. And you're going back and forth, and that back and forth between releasing the subconscious emotions and thinking of possibilities is what rewires your brain to be able to think clearly, and it clears that stuck emotion so that you can see things more clearly and find different solutions. So, for example, if you were going to go buy groceries, you probably don't have a lot of emotions about it.
Right.
But if the road is blocked on the way to getting groceries, you just find a different route. But if you have a goal that is something that you see as being difficult, like if you're saying, I'm going to make $10,000 this month, and then you just immediately have emotions about it, those emotions become the roadblock, and you can't see your way around it to just find a different route. So what this does is just clears the roadblock so that you can find solutions that you wouldn't normally see.
So do you find that oftentimes women don't even recognize what the true roadblocks are?
I think that we all do that all the time.
Yeah. That would be a fascinating exercise.
It really is. It's fun.
Because we can set goals all day long, but you know, what's the root cause of the blockage? It sounds like that's what you're really helping women get to, is the root cause of the blockage as to why they can't get to that goal.
Yeah. I've always been a get to the bottom line kind of person.
Right. Yeah.
Let's just go right to where we formed that belief when we were 3 years old and decided that we weren't enough and not lovable or whatever it is, and clear that instead of trying to go, I just can't stick to my schedule today.
Yeah, it makes total sense.
Yeah.
In our own minds, we create barriers.
Yeah.
And so you have to discover those because they're unconscious barriers.
Yes.
Yeah, gosh, I like that. So then what are some practical ways that we can break from that cycle? How do we even begin to work through that process?
One of the easiest things to do, people like to talk about silencing their inner critic, or they'll call their inner critic by a name, give her a name, like, I don't know, Betty or whatever. And just accept that there's this part of you that's criticizing you all the time. What I like to do is just turn to that part of me and ask, what do you need? And start a conversation, recognizing that that part of me is criticizing me for a reason. And the reason always has a positive intention, that she's trying to protect me from something. So first, understanding that those parts of ourselves that are pulling us in all these different ways are stuck at those younger ages where we were wounded. And they often don't see us, who we are now, as older than that stuck age. So part of it is just having a conversation with this part of you that believes you're still a child, and saying, okay, this is my life now. I'm not this. For example, I was dealing with this part of me that was like freaking out about not losing weight. And I asked her, how old do you think I am? And she said 15. Well, that explains a few things, because I am not 15 anymore. But when you think about it, if a 15-year-old is concerned about the status and the acceptance of people around her because of how she looks, there's some serious fear there. So she's still trying to protect me from those results of the judgments and the safety issues by telling me in my 50s that I need to lose weight, but I'm not 15 anymore. So it's just having a conversation with those parts of you, just talking to yourself. And it always seems so basic to me, but there's so many different modalities that you can use, but you just talk to yourself just like a real person.
Yeah, identifying that inner critic, and then at what age was that inner critic talking to you about that topic? Like, where is that stemming from? Oh, it stems from my childhood, or
Yeah,
it stems from when I was an awkward teenager, or
yeah.
And that's a hard exercise.
And then just asking, what do you need?
Yeah. It seems so simplistic, but I would never have thought to do that.
Right?
Like,
that's what I mean. There are so many different ways that people have worked out to heal, but most of them are not just having a conversation.
Right, with ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. It goes back to, asking your inner critic, what role does this voice play in my life today? And is it true? Is it authentic? Is what your inner critic's saying true about you? And then I always then consider the source.
But even if it's not true, it doesn't really matter.
Right.
Because the emotion is still there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a matter of feeling the emotion that's still stuck there, allowing yourself to feel it, which is another thing that I do. I actually wrote a little ebook about it, because we go through our entire lives working desperately to avoid feeling our emotions. And if we would just stop and process them, which only takes a few minutes, we would not have to spend any more time avoiding that emotion. But as a people, we have lost this knowledge of how to process emotion. When I say that, it's like, okay, way back when, if we were running from a tiger into the cave, we didn't have time to stop and feel how afraid we were while we're running.
Mm-hmm.
So our bodies hold that emotion for us until we're safe and can come back to it and just feel it. But we don't go back and feel it. So our bodies continue to hold this emotion for us, and it just builds up like sludge in our bodies, all this emotion that it's just waiting for us to come back and process. And we never do.
Got an injury that just can't wait? There's no need to delay your care. Center for Sports Medicine and Orthopedics is excited to announce that our Urgent Ortho Walk-In Clinic is now available on Saturdays at the Gun Barrel Road location. Open from 8 to noon, we're here to treat sprains, strains, fractures, and more. No appointment needed. So skip the long ER wait and get specialized orthopedic care fast. Visit us this Saturday at Center for Sports Medicine and Orthopedics Urgent Ortho. We're the center for expert care right when you need it. Learn more at sportmed.com.
So, Kelly, what do you say to the person who maybe had a traumatic experience and avoids trying to process those emotions because they don't want to go back to that pain?
First, you don't have to do that alone, and don't do that alone. Don't try and deal with a traumatic thing alone. But second, it does not have to rule your life, and it's not something that has to be there for the rest of your life. There absolutely is ways to bring yourself back into connection with yourself, and to not be stuck in those emotions. There is actual real ways, and not just my way, but there's a number of ways where you can clear that. You don't have to stay stuck in it. But the first step is to just start being aware of what's going on in your mind, and then to allow yourself to have those emotions without judging them. And I mean, we're all really good at judging ourselves, but to just like imagine a room in your mind that is the safe space where that's where the emotions go, where you're not going to judge them. It just is, because it's just an emotion. And like just being aware and just allowing the emotions to be there without judgment is huge steps to get you started on that journey of self-discovery and healing.
Okay. So you have talked about pain being a disconnection and that you can heal it through connection. Would you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah. This idea fascinates me because I spent so much of my life disconnected from myself. The ways that I've been able to connect with myself, it just brings me so much joy. So this idea, I heard someone say it at some point, I don't even remember who it was, but that pain is disconnection. And I was just like, wow, if pain is disconnection, then the way to heal from pain is to connect. And that's why I'm so passionate about helping people to reconnect with themselves, because that is the way to heal. And the way that I know to connect is just have a conversation, just spend time together, just like you would with anyone else. You just connect. It's really so simple.
And that to me, that goes back to identifying your inner critic and having that conversation with that person, right?
Yeah. I remember having a conversation with a guy one time, and he was telling me about how he was working with a therapist, and he kept talking about angry Paul. He said it was this younger part of himself, and how angry Paul had said this. And I'm like, well, how old is angry Paul? He said, well, 11 maybe. And I said, okay, what would change if you called him 11-year-old Paul instead of angry Paul? Is there a reason why he's angry? What is he trying to do? And what is he trying to protect you from? And it just changes the connection so that you're not trying to push him away. You're just talking to a child.
Yeah, you're really identifying that inner critic for who they are.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, they're not. It might be your 15-year-old self or your 11-year-old self, and certainly not your 50-year-old self.
Yeah. We're so used to looking at ourselves in negative ways. But when you go back, when you go back to talk to these parts of yourself that are stuck in those younger ages, it's easy for us to have compassion for a child. And so if we imagine that part of ourselves as a child, it allows us to have compassion and to start a process and a habit of having compassion, and then gradually bridging that over to having compassion for ourselves. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. And oftentimes we are the last to have compassion for ourselves.
Yeah.
We have such high expectations, or we've been trained or brought up to adhere to such high expectations.
Yeah.
That we don't give ourselves that grace. It's fascinating to think about because it does require a lot of introspection.
Yeah. And again, I think that we often avoid that introspection because we don't know how to process our emotion. So even if you're just acknowledging that you have that emotion, well, then what? I'm full of rage and pain, but what then? And it's such a simple process to just feel it, name it, to identify where it is in your body. But we just spend so much time avoiding and distracting ourselves and reacting to our emotions instead of actually feeling them. When you stop and feel it, it only takes a few minutes and it's just gone. It's kind of weird.
It is. And the fear of feeling them again is largely due to we don't want to be brought back into that, into maybe bad times or or sometimes trauma, because we fear that. But what I hear you saying is that's the path forward to start to heal.
It is. And I mean, I remember standing in a crowd when I was in my 20s, and I felt like there was this scream that was stuck in my throat. And if I let it out, it would never stop. I was sure that it would just take over my life. And that's what emotion does. It feels like it's going to kill you. But once you get past that and actually feel it, and you recognize that it's just a vibration in your body, it's just an emotion, then everything changes, because when you know that it's just an emotion and you know how to handle an emotion, then you stopping yourself from trying new things. And if the fear of failure is just an emotion and you know how to handle it, then you can fail as many times as you need to be able to succeed. So all of a sudden, you can do anything.
That's pretty remarkable. It is.
Yeah.
It's just an emotion.
Yeah.
And you can still go forward once you've identified it, and then you move forward with what's the next step. How do you begin to process it and you've put it in its place.
Yeah.
I find that incredibly helpful, because I think of those times, my inner critic. I have to tell you, my father, he was very much a expected excellence. And I remember being a young girl, and he would say, when God said trains, you thought he said, or when God said brains, you thought he said trains, and you ran and hid. And he would always tell me things like that indicated, you're not very smart. So I remember, there are many times even today when I'll think about that. That's my inner critic. My inner critic is that little girl who was told that she hid when God was passing out brains. So this is helpful.
That's so interesting, because my first impression of you was, wow, this woman is really brilliant.
Oh, well, thank you. I have to remember all of the time when I start to criticize myself or something that maybe I didn't do right. I go back to that and I think, okay, that's coming from my father, who used to say things like that. And he or the other one he would say is, when God was passing out brains, you thought he said rain and hid under a tree. Those are some of the things that he would say that kept me believing that I was not smart enough. So even as an adult, when I'm starting to be very critical of myself, I'll go back to that. Okay, this is coming from that man telling me that when I was a 6-year-old, 7-year-old little girl. So
okay, but you want to hear something even more trippy?
Yes.
Is that in my own inner work about my dad's voice, realizing that it was a part of me that was repeating his voice, because clearly my dad is not in my head.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a part of me that had taken on the role that thought they needed to repeat his voice because they were trying to protect me from something. So not only is it not actually your father in your head, it's a part of you that for whatever reason they've decided they need to use his voice to protect you from something. So the trick is to go back and go, okay, what is it that you're trying to protect me from? And that's why, like, this whole asking, how old do you think I am, is so cool, because when they realize, like, when I walk a part of me through my life and show them my grandsons, it's clear that I'm not a 5-year-old anymore.
Right.
And that I've learned some things about how to handle things, that they don't need to protect a 5-year-old anymore. I'm not that little girl anymore. So then you can work together to solve the problem instead of them just trying to protect you.
That makes so much sense. Yeah. So it truly is a process of having a conversation with yourself.
Yeah.
I love that. It's so simple.
Right?
Why haven't we thought of that sooner?
Yeah.
Well, this has really been enlightening for me, I have to tell you. It just puts a whole new perspective on things and helping to, really break free and swipe away all those cobwebs in our brains so we can start to imagine our life and what we are possible of doing, which is limitless, really.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah.
So I have to ask you, Kelly, in your years of working with people, was there one story that particularly moved you?
I was thinking about that. It's not really that it's one story. It's that moment when people go from fighting the problem to connecting to themselves. And I had this one friend that I walked through a mind shifting session, and she was stuck in this traumatic memory of when her dog died and all of the things that happened around that from like 15 years ago. And so it was like intrusive thoughts, and it was something that was in her brain a lot currently. So we went through a mind shifting process, and 20 minutes later, she's just going, whoa, like what just happened? And she said a week later that it's just different, that she has compassion for that past her in a way that she never had, and that she can just see the whole situation differently, and it's the intrusive thoughts aren't there. And it was 20 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was incredible.
And imagine how long she suffered with those intrusive thoughts.
Right?
Yeah. Wow, that's powerful. So what's inspiring you today?
What's inspiring me is I've been playing with human design, and I don't know much about it. All I know is that it keeps telling me that I'm supposed to listen to my emotions, which is hilarious because all my conditioning says you put aside your emotions, you logic things out, you make wise decisions. You don't make decisions based on your emotions. But that's who I am. And as I've been making decisions based on what feels good, the joy just turns up in my life. And it's just amazing. The things that are happening in this last season while I choose what feels good inside of me instead of doing what's expected of me. It's amazing.
Well, that's bravery.
Yeah.
It really is. That's very cool. I really appreciate you joining me today, Kelly. I think that you've given our listeners a new insight into how they can begin to unstick themselves or be unstuck in their mental processes as they're going through the trauma of divorce.
Yeah.
And would you share with our listeners how they can get in touch with you, your website, your social media? And then I will also post those in the show notes as well.
Sure. My website is therewiredlife.com, and it's Kelly McCooeye or Kelly E. McCooeye on Facebook. Apparently there's another Kelly McCooeye that's not me, which is just rude, but and it's Rewired Life Coach on Instagram.
Okay. All right. I will put those out there for people who want to pursue more about mind shifting. I think it can be life-changing for certain.
Yeah.
So for our listeners, please join me on the next episode of the Silver Divorce Podcast. I also ask, please share this and leave a rating and a review. This podcast is brought to you by our title sponsor, the Center for Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, and show sponsor, Medicare Misty. The Center for Sports Medicine and Orthopedics is the area's leading provider of multi-specialty orthopedic care. Using innovative surgical techniques and technologies, our team of specialists deliver exceptional results backed by exceptional patient care. Learn more at sportmed.com. And Medicare Misty is a real person who can help answer your Medicare questions. Get real help from her team at medicaremisty.com. Whether you are considering divorce or maybe you're newly in the divorce process, we will help you on your journey and tell you things your attorney might not tell you. Until next time, remember, divorce is one event. It does not define who you are. I'm Lisa, and I'll see you next time.